Hello, everyone. Here we are with another one of our wonderful teachers for Quilt 2024. Very happy to be welcoming Susan Bunce. Welcome, Susan. Wonderful to see you here. Wonderful to meet you. Would you like to give us your introduction?
I'm Susan. I am working on classes in Illustrator to teach people how to use Illustrator to design quilts and things like that. So that's me.
Wonderful. All right, great. And how did you first get started in quilting?
My grandmother and my mother both sew, and my mom is notorious for just slapping things together. So I think I went the opposite route and tried to make things very precise and to make sure that they were very accurate. So I kind of learned from both of them. So my starting quilting, I want to say I had to be, the saying goes knee high to a grasshopper. I was very, very young when I first started piecing. Other than that, I think I really started seriously quilting more when my kids were little.
Yeah, that's something that I think a lot of people have in common. That it's when the kids or grandkids, or in my case, nieces, start appearing, that's when they really hit their mark. And do you remember what you were making early on?
The, well, like I said, my very first quilt from when I was very, very young was something for $1 a bear. Like I remember it, it was just probably like maybe a foot and a half by like 12 inches wide or something. And it was just for a little bear for a bed. That was it. I still probably have it somewhere, but yeah, very
Oh,
simple.
yeah. Oh, how sweet. And of course, you've gone on to develop your style. And I can see that we've got some of your quilts in the background here as well. Do you want to
Yes.
just tell us? I think there's three different ones there.
There are the very bottom one in the chair, the first one in the chair is just Tula pink fabrics. And I wanted to try, I don't even know if I'm saying it right, the Bargello, like where you just cut
Yeah.
into strips
Yeah.
and make the wave things out of it. So that was just most of the time when I've quilted, I've just put things together. I've always designed my own. I've very rarely followed patterns, but I say that. And the next one up there is actually Tula Pink's Tula Nova, and it's English paper piecing. It was my first English paper piecing quilt. It was my 2020 I'm staying at home project.
Hmm.
And I fell in love with that technique. So that's really where I spend more of my time. And then the one that's over the back of the chair there is one that I've designed, and that pattern will be coming out early January for Tranquil Buzz. So you can go to my website now and sign up for that pattern release if you're interested in it.
Wonderful. And of course, this interview will be going live at the beginning of January, so perfect timing. I mean, there's a mixture there of solids and patterned fabrics. Like, would you describe yourself as a modern quilter or a traditional or a mixture of the two, or how would you say it?
It's probably a mixture of the two. I'd say the one draped over the back is probably my most modern. I don't know. I use tons of bright colored fabrics and I like prints, so I really don't know how to qualify myself.
I know there's a poll going on at the moment because we're recording this mid-December, and there's a poll going on at the moment in the Facebook group for the event about how people describe themselves traditional, modern, and the majority are definitely the mixture of the two because it's so difficult to define. I'm sure there are modern quilters that are saying out loud, it's not difficult at all to define. But I certainly find it difficult to define what makes one from another, and it can't be as simple as just using solids. Like there must be more to it than
I
that.
wouldn't think so, but I would say probably most modern quilters are looking at that going, hello, that's not modern.
Yeah,
But
yeah. And is Tula Pink someone that you're like her fabrics that you're particularly fond of?
for sure. I love her colors. I love how I'm going to back up. I love her colors, but what I really like about her is her humor. Like she is so funny in the things that she does. And when you first look at the patterns and the prints, you're just kind of like, oh, either you love it or you hate it. I mean, it's one of those things. People love Tula or they hate Tula. But you get into her little things and there's just so much funny things. And when you hear her stories about her designs, she just puts so much thought into it and the story behind it. And I just admire that in someone when they put that much into something. So,
Absolutely. And they're so good for fussy cutting as well, especially for the English paper
right.
piece, which I guess appeals to your precise nature.
Yes, yes. And she does think about that because she does English paper piecing too. So she thinks about it, and the size of her stripes really fits the English paper piecing shapes well.
Hmm.
So she's thought through the process from start to finish. So I really like that.
Yes, yes, no, absolutely. I hadn't thought about that, about how the shape of the motifs is perfect as well. But you're right, that's
Yeah.
absolutely true. And then I also saw a bag just over your shoulder on the floor as well, which has got
Oh,
that lovely,
yes, we'll get out of the way.
yeah, lovely foundation piece monogram on the front as well.
Yeah. So that'll be something that'll be, it should be released by January as well. It's a foundation piece monogram set. So when you're making the bags, this happens to be a by Annie bag, the Ultimate Travel bag.
Mhm.
I had a live with her back in September, so you could go back and watch that if you're interested. But her little PC, everything is so adaptable to adding this monogram set on there. So if you don't have an embroidery machine or something where you can actually embroider your monogram on there, you can piece your monogram and just add it to the bag that way.
That's a lovely idea. Or I suppose you could write the word "so" or something on it
Right.
as well,
Anything
like
you want.
a
So
little
I
one.
actually included the whole alphabet. There's numbers 0 through 9, and then there's like an exclamation point, a question mark, a hashtag, so you can kind of get fun with it. This bag really only has space for, like, you might could fit 4 letters on there. I have 3 with some spacers on either side, but you could probably get 4 there if you, it depends on what you're trying to write, but
Okay, well, this leads me on to another question, which may have a very simple answer, but your company name, your business name is Studio 708. Where does that name come from?
it is so very not that interesting. Actually, the first part of my, the last part of the phone number that I have is
Mm.
708. And so it just fit.
Oh,
Wish it
brilliant.
had a great story. I'm gonna have to invent a great story for that because there's not one. But
Absolutely. It's the number of inches of binding that you did, something. Yeah, yeah, something like
there you
that.
go. That's what we'll have to come up with next time. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah. And I know because you had a career or possibly have a career making pattern designing for corporate companies, for big companies. And when did you start to transition more into quilt design?
Really, it was probably 2020. I do still work in the industry now.
Mm.
I don't do pattern making for clothing. I've done that. It's been about 35 years since I was in school. So truthfully, I just got burnt out. I mean, you do the same thing over and over and over. And I just was like, I am so tired of doing clothing patterns. And so the company I work for now, I manage their production. So I don't actually make the patterns. I just make sure everything makes it out the door. So we're
That must
super busy as we're interviewing right now. We're super busy because it's Christmas. When we do custom men's shirts, we're trying to get everything out the door in time. So,
wow.
I mean, that's what I do now. But in 2020, everybody had to rethink life. And I started doing things and I thought, I've got to do something else because I enjoy my job. Don't get me wrong, but I need something else to think about, something else to do. And so I started getting into this world of quilting and discovered that it's just a whole, there's a whole nother world to it that I didn't expect. And I'm going to kind of go into, I think, one of your other questions, but I thought, I've done clothing patterns. I've done clothing patterns forever. How hard can a quilt pattern be?
Hmm.
So little did I know that I really speak fashion language and I did not speak quilting language, and they are two very different things, which is not something I expected. So that was kind of a surprise. As far as making the patterns, that part, it still translates. I mean, you can still go back and forth from a 3D to a flat, but the language part of it, the wording part of it was kind of a shock.
Well, let's talk about that because your workshop is about using Adobe Illustrator to help with pattern designing and fabric placement, and it's going to be fascinating, I'm sure. But when did you start using Illustrator for pattern design yourself? Because I imagine originally it would have been paper, was it? Paper.
Yeah, right. When I graduated from college, Gerber, which is an industry standard apparel, I think they use it for a bunch of different things, but in the apparel industry, Gerber computer system was what they used in the big companies. They were super expensive, so nobody really had one. So yes, we did everything on paper, and then we would grade it, and everything was done by hand on paper. But in the past, I think it's been about 15 years, I've taught at the college level at the Art Institute here in San Antonio. And so we had a Gerber system, we were teaching that. And then I started getting into Illustrator. I realized that we could do the same thing in a program that most of us already have, or most of the people that are in the fashion stuff already had. Well, then I got into the quilting stuff, and so much of that translates right over into the quilting industry as well. So it was an easy switch from that, from one step to the other. But yes, we've gone all the way from paper all the way to, you don't even have to own a piece of paper. You can just do it straight in your computer.
Right. And I know the Adobe company have developed their products, evolved their products a lot since the
Yes.
early days when, because of course they were the ones that have got the Adobe PDF reader and
Right.
Photoshop and all sorts of other products. For people who haven't used Illustrator before, are they going to be able to follow this workshop? Is it going to make sense to them?
Yes, I would say that you're going to need more than this one little workshop to feel proficient in Illustrator, but we're not going to cover how to set up the whole entire thing because I really want you to see what Illustrator can do, but we will cover basics. We're going to cover basic shapes. And then just as simple as going to a fabric manufacturer's website and downloading their fabric swatches so that we can learn how to pull in like things that aren't even available at the fabric store yet. We can go get those from the website, pull them into our computer, and mock up a quilt with those fabrics before they're even available. And so that's a lot of fun because you can pre-plan what you want to do and you can make it look like you sewed it basically by turning the patterns and learning how to do that. So we'll cover all of that, but yes, it will be hopefully simple enough that somebody that hasn't used Illustrator will just be excited about it and want to learn.
Oh wow. So if there's a collection coming out that you're excited about, or if I suppose if you're a designer who wants to get ahead of the curve on designing
Right.
for the next Tula collection, for example, you can go in and sample these fabrics somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, you can.
Amazing. Okay, well, I can imagine this will work really well because we've got several workshops about designing quilts and unblocking your creativity and letting the creative energy flow. And I can just imagine this working really well with some of those. When you're designing quilts, who or what are some of the things that inspire you? Some of the other artists?
Well, as far as the artist, like I said, Tula, I'm more inspired by looking at the fabrics and then designing a quilt instead of the other way around. I know some people lay out a quilt and then choose fabrics. I like to see fabrics or see the colors and then start putting things together that way. So I kind of work backwards as far as that goes, or I feel like it's backwards. I guess we all have our own way, but just working one direction or the other. So yeah, I like Tula. Actually, K Facet. I kind of just like any of the bright, crazy colors. I feel like the one that you see with the most solids, that's probably the most solid quilt I've ever made in my whole entire life. But there's still probably 23 fabrics in there if I unfolded the whole thing because it kind of does the
Wow.
whole rainbow variation across it. So
Mhm.
I'd say it's the most solid. It's all solids, but there's still a lot of color in that quilt.
Yes, it looks beautiful, and I've seen it unfolded on your website as well, and it is a beautiful design. Um,
Thank you.
I guess I I'm wondering because I know I've seen also on your website that you've used quilting cottons in clothing as well. And
Yes.
you've actually designed patterns for clothing that use quilting cottons, am I right?
Yes, yeah. I don't have any of them back there behind me now, but yeah, um, that's kind of what I was trying to do. So whenever I started this thing, I was ready to make that hard cut and ditch the fashion and go to
Mhm.
quilting. And I've decided along the way that what I do now is I'm blending the two things. So in my own personal stuff, I'm taking my clothing patterns and then doing like English paper piecing parts in them, or did I have a shirt that has a foundation pieced top on it. So just different ways to incorporate what I've already done in the fashion industry with what we're doing in the quilting industry and how to blend the two.
That sounds amazing because I've made clothes. I don't do it regularly, but I sort of make a couple of things a year. And I've often, you get so many beautiful quilting fabrics, but I've often found that they're not quite the right weight, or they don't kind of drape or something like that. How have you dealt with that kind of thing?
So you do have to be careful to exactly what you're thinking about drape wise and what your shirt or what your garment's going to look like in the end. And so many people are used to wearing knits
Mm.
that they expect it to behave the same. And of course, knits stretch, and that's a woven fabric and it doesn't stretch. So you do have to take that into consideration. But the patterns that I have coming out will be, they're set to be like where the quilting cottons are going to fit into that design. So as long as it's not something super, like you're not expecting to make like a rayon shirt where it's really drapey on you and then switch to a quilting cotton, that's not going to work. But if it's set for any woven cottons, it should be fine.
I suppose I have seen some fabric designers who have released rayons and knits as part of their collections. I think I'm trying to remember who it is. Like
Art gallery.
Art Gallery, yes.
Art gallery.
It was Free Spirit, but yeah, I've definitely seen that from them, although I haven't used any of them myself. But I suppose that's another alternative. And are there, because not all quilting cottons are created equal, are there brands that you think lend themselves more easily to clothing?
I've used a lot of Free Spirit and Art Gallery. The interesting thing about Free Spirit is that K Facet fabrics, he actually has them weave his fabrics differently. So they feel lighter weight and drapier. So I did not realize that until I made a shirt out of his stuff. And I was like, whoa, I kind of like this. It's lighter weight than Tula, or lighter weight than some of the other designers there. So it's just an interesting thing. I don't know for sure if any other ones are the same way, but I did go ask Free Spirit at market and they were like, oh yeah, he told us he wanted this, this, this. And I'm like, okay, note to self, I really like that. So it is, I wouldn't say it's like as soft as a lawn, but it is lighter weight.
Oh, wow. Yes, I suppose that's the sort of thing you can demand when you're selling as much fabric and and
Right.
everything as K Facet does. And then, of course, yeah, the Liberty fabrics, I guess, are the ones known for being on the soft lawn fabric and
Right.
being very differently behaved. No, that's fascinating. And yeah, I love the creativity of the patterns on your website with the kind of curves and piecing and so on. It's just yeah, so it's an unusual usage, a unique usage, I think, of all these different beautiful
Thanks.
fabrics.
Well, the goal is to get people that are used to quilting to sewing garments because, yeah, most quilters don't want to sew garments and most garment sewers don't want to quilt. I mean, that it's a crossover there that they kind of have a block for. These patterns are really set to be beginner friendly. They look kind of complicated, but really it's not. And everything, like I use a serger, but I have set up where they don't have to serge. I mean, like there's ways to be around that if you don't want to invest in other equipment, which I get if you're not really a garment sewer, you don't want to buy into an expensive serger or expensive something that you're not sure you're going to use. So we talk about easy ways to put buttons on, easy way to do everything so that you could make a garment and then feel pretty confident in your skill level and it's not over your head.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I've been on the brink of buying a serger for about 10 years now. And just
On
never,
the brink for 10 years.
yeah, it's like I've been thinking about getting a tattoo and any time now I'm gonna decide. And I first thought about it about 25 years ago. So
Oh, that's
any day
funny.
now though. But yeah, it's I just don't feel like I do the quantity that would justify another machine. And so I seem to end up doing a lot of zigzagging instead to finish a lot of
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong
no,
with that.
no, nothing at all. So we're recording this in December, as we discussed, and it's going to go live in January. You've already mentioned some things you've got in the works for 2024. Where else do you think your business is going to take you next year?
I don't know. It just seems to be ever evolving. I do have a tote bag in work.
Ooh,
So
lovely.
I was working with by Annie stuff, but I have a tote bag that should be coming out. Lots of patterns should be hitting earlier well, in January, earlier in 2024. That's the way I should say that. So I have 3 shirt patterns that the patterns are ready and graded, just not made available for the public yet. And then that 1 tote bag ready. So all those should be hitting early. The foundation paper pieced monogram thing and the quilt pattern. So all that's already headed that way. I do have another shirt pattern in design phase. So really I'll probably keep with the pieced clothing stuff. so I can mix both my both my loves from one to the other.
Wonderful. And I'm so looking forward because I'm sure people will be sharing things that they're making as we go through the summit and afterwards, I'm sure. And I'm so looking forward to seeing what comes out of your workshop, what people make with your patterns. Yeah, I just think there's going to be so much sharing and creativity and inspiration going around. It's going to be wonderful.
I'm so excited about it. That's true. I can't wait.
I know it's all coming together very nicely, as Hannibal in the A Team would say. I love it when a plan comes together.
Yes.
It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. All I know I'll be putting links to everything you've talked about in the show, in the show notes, the interview notes that go along the page in the VIP section. Yeah, and of course your teacher page will be linked to as well, which has got your social notes, your social links, and your website and everything. So
Right.
everyone follow Susan and see what she comes up with next.
And if you have a question, right, send an email and ask. I'll be happy to answer.
Wonderful. Susan, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.